Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? That thought drifted through Hannah Reeves's mind like a grain of sand caught in wind, small, irritating, but impossible to shake. She sat near the end of the plywood table, stethoscope coiled beside her, eyes tracing the faded map of the valley. Around her, the platoon buzzed, boots scraping, metal clinking, frustration hanging in the air thicker than the desert heat. They spoke about tactics, convoys, supply routes. Not one of them looked at her. To them, she was the medic, helpful, kind, but background noise. And maybe that's what she wanted. No one in this outpost knew who she used to be. The base itself was a forgotten speck in the southern desert, wedged between ridges of red stone and silence. Days bled into one another. Patrols went out. Sometimes they came back limping, sometimes not at all. And every time Hannah patched them up, quiet, efficient, detached. "Lieutenant Reeves," Captain Ward barked. "You'll stay on standby in the tent. We're expecting another dust storm. If comms drop again, you'll coordinate medevac manually." She nodded soft "yes, sir," barely audible. Cole chuckled from across the table, a short, tired sound that reeked of cynicism. "Manual, with what, duct tape and prayer?" The room laughed. Hannah didn't, because she'd seen prayer fail before. When the meeting broke, she gathered her kit and walked out into the open heat. The sun was merciless, flattening shadows into nothing. For a long moment she just stood there, breathing in sand and diesel and the faint metallic tang of gun oil. Her reflection in the Humvee window looked foreign, short-cropped hair, calm eyes that betrayed nothing. But under the surface, there was always that current, that quiet hum of control she couldn't switch off. Years of training had wired her that way. No emotion, no panic, just precision. But the men here didn't see precision. They saw a nurse. And that was fine, until the day one of them put a gun to her head. It started at dusk, on a windless afternoon that made even the flies disappear. Patrol Charlie had returned battered, vehicles scraped, tempers frayed. Cole slammed his helmet onto a crate, muttering curses. 3 days out there and command still doesn't know what they're doing, he snapped. We're chasing ghosts. No one answered. Everyone was too tired, too thirsty, too done. Hannah watched from the med tent, sleeves rolled, hands still blood-stained from stitching up a corporal's shoulder. She saw the shift, the way Cole's posture stiffened, the way frustration hardened into something else. Anger. He was young, but the desert had aged him. Skin cracked, voice rough, eyes hollow. The kind of soldier the war chewed up and spat out before he knew it was happening. He kicked a fuel can. We're breaking out there while she sits in here playing nurse. She looked up slowly. You're bleeding again, Sergeant. Don't talk to me like I'm one of your patients. You are. He froze, jaw tight. The silence between them stretched, taut as a tripwire. Then, with a clatter, he shoved the crate aside and stepped forward. You think you're better than us. Hannah's gaze didn't flinch. You're out of line. He kept moving, one step then another. When his hand brushed the holster, everything slowed. Clicking. The sound echoed through the entire camp. Even the wind seemed to stop. Every soldier froze, dust hung midair. And there she was, still steady, unblinking. Her voice came quiet, almost gentle. Put that down, Sergeant. He sneered. Or what? You'll patch me up with moral lessons. Her tone didn't change. Before you find out who I used to be. Someone whispered from the sidelines. She used to be Navy. Another corrected him under his breath. Not just Navy, SEAL Team 6. The words sliced through the heat like a blade. Cole's hand trembled. He tried to laugh it off, but his throat caught. You're lying. She took one step forward, then another. Every motion deliberate, calm, controlled. Each step tightened the space between them, until the cold ring of his pistol pressed against her forehead. Her eyes, gray, unreadable, never left his. Do it, she whispered. But make sure you do, miss, because if you do, I won't. The medic behind them gasped. Someone muttered a prayer. The camp turned into a portrait of stillness. No breath, no movement, no sound. Cole's jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, he looked lost. Then the weight of what he'd done hit him. Too late. Hannah's hand flashed. A twist, a crack of motion too fast to follow. The gun clattered into the dust. Cole dropped to his knees, stunned. She stood over him, weapon now pointed harmlessly toward the sand. Her breathing slow, her pulse steady, her silence louder than any shout. "Discipline," she said finally, voice calm but cutting. "It's not about who yells the loudest. It's about who stays in control when everything else falls apart." He stared at the ground. "Ma'am, I—" She shook her head. "You're not my enemy, Sergeant. Your anger is. Learn to fight that, not your own people." Then she handed him back the pistol. "Grip first." "Keep it, you might need it out there," she said quietly, "but not in here." That night no one spoke much. The desert wind returned, whispering through torn canvas. Some played cards in silence. Others cleaned weapons that didn't need cleaning. But everyone kept glancing toward the medical tent, where a single lantern still burned. Inside, Hannah sat alone, replaying the moment, not with pride, with weight. She promised herself she'd never reveal who she was, not again, not after Kabul. The memory rose like smoke. A rooftop, the crack of a rifle, her spotter's voice fatting in the comms. She'd left pieces of herself there, trust, belief, a name. When the operation went sideways, command disavowed. Team 6 never existed that night. Neither did Lieutenant Reeves. So she reinvented herself. A medic, a nobody, a ghost helping other ghosts. She leaned back, eyes closing, and whispered to the empty tent, "You can't bury what you are. You can only hope it stays asleep." Outside, Cole sat by the fire, staring at his hands. The others avoided him, not out of hate, but out of respect. He'd faced the storm and walked away shaken, changed. Before he turned in, he murmured to Dawes. She didn't even raise her voice. Dawes nodded. "That's what scared me the most." Morning brought silence again, different this time, heavier. When Hannah stepped out, the men straightened instinctively. Not salute, just quiet acknowledgement, the kind given to someone who'd earned it the hard way. Cole approached, head low. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely." She looked at him, eyes soft. "Go ahead." "I don't know what happened yesterday, but thank you." "For what?" "For not shooting me." That made her laugh, first time anyone had heard it. A quiet, almost surprised sound. "I don't shoot my own," she said. "Just teach them how not to self-destruct." He nodded, awkward. "Still, if you ever need a volunteer, I'm in." She tilted her head. "For what?" "Whatever comes next." Something flickered in her eyes. Maybe trust, maybe warning. "Careful what you offer, Sergeant, you might mean it." Later that week, the radio crackled with static, urgent, panicked. A convoy trapped 30 clicks east, ambushed, requesting med support. Hannah was already moving before command finished the sentence. Cole followed without hesitation. The desert stretched out before them, barren, endless, alive with unseen threats. As they loaded into the Humvee, Cole glanced at her gear, standard medical kit, rifle slung low. "You ever get nervous?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Nervous keeps you human." "And you?" "I used to be something else." He frowned. "Used to be." She looked at the horizon. "Ask me after we bring them back." The engine roared. Sand lifted like smoke. And for the first time, the men in the convoy didn't see her as the medic. They saw what she'd always been, composed, lethal, unshakable. That night the camp fell quiet again. Cole couldn't sleep. He kept replaying that afternoon, the barrel, her eyes, the words she said. "Before you find out who I used to be." He understood now that some people carried battles no one else could see. And some wars never ended. When he finally drifted off, he thought of one truth. The calmest person in the room isn't always peaceful. Sometimes, it's the one who's already survived the storm. Why was the convoy still not answering? The question repeated over the radio, each word cracking through static like distant thunder. Hannah's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel as the Humvee jolted over the uneven ground. Dust filled the cabin. Beside her, Cole manned the gunner's hatch, scanning the ridges with tired, unblinking eyes. They were 20 minutes out. "Reeves, this is command, sitrep." "Still en route," she said, voice calm. "No visual yet." A pause, then, "Be advised, hostiles possibly regrouping. You'll be on your own until QRF mobilizes." "Copy." The line went dead. She didn't tell Cole the rest, that QRF would take an hour to get there, that the convoy might not last that long. She'd been in this situation before. Different desert, different year. The sound of gunfire in her memory wasn't so different from the wind howling now. The road curved along a dry wadi, its banks steep and shadowed. Perfect place for an ambush. She slowed the vehicle, eyes up. Cole nodded, rifle ready. Then they saw it, the convoy. 3 trucks riddled with bullet holes, tires shredded, smoke curling from an engine compartment. And silence. Too much silence. Hannah killed the engine and listened. Nothing. No birds, no movement. She stepped out, boots sinking into the dust, the air hot enough to sting. Every sense sharpened, narrowed. "Cole, cover left," she whispered. "I'll check for survivors." She moved low, scanning. The first truck empty. Second, blood on the doors, but no bodies. The third one made her stop. Someone was breathing inside. She opened the door carefully. A young private slumped against the seat, chest rising shallow, eyes glassy. "Help," he rasped. She was at his side instantly. Gloves on, tourniquet out, movements automatic, clean, rehearsed. "Stay with me," she murmured. "You're gonna be fine." He grabbed her wrist, eyes wide. "They took her." "Who?" He coughed blood. "Lieutenant Avery." They dragged her toward the ridge. Hannah froze for half a second, then she stood. "Cole, we've got one alive. Send the med drone. I'm going after the officer." He hesitated, alone. "Every second counts." Cole looked at her, the same woman who'd faced a loaded gun without flinching, and understood there was no arguing. He nodded. "I'll hold position." She grabbed her rifle, slung it over her shoulder, and started toward the ridge. The slope was steep, loose stone shifting underfoot. Sweat trickled down her neck, but her breathing stayed even. She'd done this 1,000 times. Afghanistan, Somalia, the places the world forgot. She moved like a shadow between rocks, scanning for movement. Then faintly she heard it, voices carried by the wind. 2 men, maybe 3, arguing. And a woman's muffled cry. Hannah crouched, heartbeat steady, eyes narrowing on the sound. She crept forward until she saw them. 3 insurgents, one dragging a captured officer through the sand. Avery, young, terrified, blood on her temple. Hannah assessed angles, distances, terrain. 50 meters, no cover. She exhaled slowly. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. 1 breath, 2. The first shot cracked through the silence. The man holding Avery dropped instantly. The other 2 spun, shouting. Second shot clean. Third one tried to run. He didn't get far. Hannah stayed in position for several seconds, scanning for movement. None. Then she sprinted down the ridge, sliding on loose gravel, rifle still up. Avery was alive, shaken but breathing. Hannah crouched beside her. "You're safe, can you walk?" The young officer stared at her like she wasn't real. Who are you?" Hannah smiled faintly. "Just the medic." They reached the convoy just as Cole finished loading the wounded private onto the med drone stretcher. When he saw Hannah guiding Avery through the dust, his mouth fell open. "You went after them." Hannah said nothing. She just helped Avery into the Humvee. As they drove back, no one spoke. The desert stretched wide and endless ahead of them, and the sunset bled across the horizon like spilled fire. Finally, Avery whispered, "I thought you were medical staff." Hannah's lips curved, so did everyone. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Hannah looked out the window, voice barely audible. "Places I don't talk about." Back at camp, the atmosphere shifted. News spread fast. The medic had gone alone into enemy ground and come back with the missing lieutenant. Some called it reckless, others called it impossible. Cole just called it something else, proof. He'd seen that calm before in her eyes when he'd held the gun. Now he understood. It wasn't fearlessness. It was discipline, sharpened by years of walking the edge. That night he found her sitting outside, staring at the stars. The desert was quiet again, and the sky stretched so wide it almost hurt to look at. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She didn't turn. "You already are." "That day when you said, 'Before you find out who I used to be,' what did you mean?" She hesitated, fingers tracing the scar on her wrist. "Ever heard of Operation Broken Silence?" Cole frowned. "That classified raid, Kabul 2018, rumors said half the team didn't make it." "They didn't. And you?" She exhaled. "I did, but I left someone behind." The air shifted, quiet, heavy. Cole didn't press, but she kept speaking as if she'd carried it too long to keep buried. "His name was Mason, my spotter. We were supposed to extract after neutralizing a weapons convoy, but intel was bad. The convoy was a decoy. Real target was underground. I called it in, command said hold position." Her jaw tightened. "He didn't make it. The comms went dead, the op went black, and they erased us. Officially, SEAL Team 6 never operated that night. We became ghosts." Cole swallowed hard. "That's why you left." She nodded. "When the uniform becomes a cage, sometimes walking away is the only way to stay human." For a while, neither spoke. Just the low hum of the desert and the quiet weight of shared understanding. Then Cole said softly, "You saved Avery today. You didn't have to." Hannah's gaze lifted to the stars. "I couldn't save Mason. I won't make that mistake twice." The next morning, command sent a commendation report. Hannah ignored it. She didn't want medals. She wanted silence, the kind that didn't hurt. But the base was changing. The soldiers who once overlooked her now moved differently around her, more careful, more respectful, almost reverent. Even Captain Ward, once dismissive, treated her words like orders. It wasn't fame. It was something quieter, the kind of respect born from fear and awe mixed with gratitude. Cole started shadowing her on patrols, not because he was told to, but because he wanted to understand. "Teach me," he said one afternoon as they checked perimeter fences. She glanced at him. "Teach you what?" "How to stay that calm, how to be like that." Hannah chuckled. "You sure you want that? Calm doesn't come from peace, Sergeant. It comes from surviving chaos so many times it becomes your normal." He looked at her. "Then teach me how to survive it." Her smile faded. "All right, first lesson, you don't control fear, you dance with it." Days passed, routine patrols, dust. But something inside her had shifted. That old instinct, the part of her that used to lead, to command, to fight, was waking up. And with it came dreams, the kind she hadn't had in years. A rooftop, a scope, a flash of light, Mason's voice in her ear. "We're surrounded, Reeves, what's the call?" Her answer had always been the same: hold. She woke each time before the blast. One night she stepped outside, unable to sleep. The wind carried whispers of sand, soft and haunting. Cole was there too, leaning against a vehicle, sipping coffee gone cold. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Back where?" "To the teams, to what you were." Hannah thought for a long moment. "Sometimes, but then I remember being a SEAL wasn't who I was. It was what I did, who I am, that's what's left after the noise. Cole nodded, silent respect in his eyes. 2 days later, command called for a briefing. Intel had come in, enemy movement regrouping near the same valley where the convoy had been ambushed. Possible retaliation strike. As the team gathered around the table, Ward outlined the plan. Recon only, no engagement unless necessary. Cole caught Hannah's glance. They both knew what that meant. Necessary would come fast. After the meeting, as they geared up, Cole said, "You think it's a trap?" "Everything's a trap," she said quietly. "The trick is deciding if it's worth walking into." He smirked. "You always talk in riddles." She zipped her vest, "Only when the truth hurts." The sun dipped low when they rolled out again. Hannah's thoughts wandered as the Humvee bounced along the dirt path. Back to Mason. Back to the night the mission went black. She could still hear his last words, calm, steady, trusting her to find a way. Maybe that's what haunted her most, that he died believing she would fix it. Now another unit depended on her calm, on her decisions. And maybe redemption wasn't something you found. Maybe it was something you built, one choice, one heartbeat, one mission at a time. As they neared the ridge, the radio crackled again. Unknown movement ahead, possible heat signatures. Cole looked at her, orders. Hannah's eyes narrowed. "We go quiet." The convoy slowed to a crawl. The desert swallowed their sound. Somewhere ahead in the fading light something moved, fast, coordinated. She felt it before she saw it. The air thickened, heavy with intent. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Get ready, it's starting again." Why did the valley feel wrong? It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, just the pause before something breaks. The convoy rolled to a slow stop along the ridge, engines idling low. The horizon burned orange, bleeding into the flat, endless sand. Hannah stepped out first, boots crunching against gravel, eyes scanning the slopes below. Nothing moved, not wind, not life, not even birds. Cole leaned from the gunner's hatch, his voice low. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" She nodded. "That's the problem, I'm not seeing anything." He frowned, meaning. She didn't answer, just crouched and ran her fingers through the sand. The grains shifted unnaturally, forming faint ripples in one direction only, like something, or someone, had passed through not long ago. She stood slowly. "Ambush site, they're waiting for us to commit." Cole's eyes widened. "You're sure?" "Instinct doesn't lie." Then she tapped her earpiece. "All units halt movement, keep positions tight, watch the high ground." Static, a soft hiss, then silence. She tried again. "Command, this is Reeves, comms check." "Nothing." She glanced up at Cole. "They're jamming us." And just like that, the desert exhaled. A single shot rang out, then another, then chaos. Bullets sliced through the air, striking metal, tearing canvas. The convoy scattered for cover. Hannah dove behind a half-buried rock, pulling Cole down beside her. Dust exploded in small clouds with every impact. "Contact northeast ridge," he shouted. "I see it," she barked back, rolling to peek through her scope. 3 no 5 positions up high, using the ridgeline for cover. Smart, organized, trained. These weren't just raiders. Hannah's jaw tightened. She switched to single fire, breath steady, pulse even. Years of muscle memory returning like an old friend. The first shot a clean hit, second through the shoulder, third missed by inches, ricocheting off stone. She adjusted, exhaled, fired again. Silence. Then movement. A shadow darting between rocks, heading straight for the convoy. Cole spotted it too. Runner. On it. She was already moving, sprinting across the sand, rifle tucked close. Each step deliberate, controlled. The runner reached the base of the hill, pulling a wired pack from his vest. Explosive. Hannah didn't hesitate. One shot, center mass. He dropped, detonator clattering from his hand. Clear, she shouted. Cole exhaled from behind cover. Remind me never to piss you off again. She smirked. You already learned that lesson. When the gunfire finally died, the silence felt heavier than before. Smoke drifted over the sand, the air thick with the metallic tang of spent rounds. Cole climbed down, chest heaving. That was too coordinated. They knew our route. Hannah nodded, and our timing. You think someone's leaking intel? Or tracking us? She crouched near the fallen runner, searching his gear. No insignia, no patches, but his radio Western model. New. She picked it up, inspected it, frowned. U.S. frequency encryption. Cole's eyes widened. Wait, our tech. She nodded grimly. Someone's supplying them. Why? She looked up at the ridge, where the last rays of sunlight painted the rocks blood red. Because war doesn't care who wins, only who profits. Back at base, the mood was taut. Soldiers whispered in corners. Command demanded reports. Captain Ward slammed a file onto the table. You disobeyed direct recon protocol, Reeves. Hannah didn't blink. We'd be dead if I hadn't. Ward's jaw flexed. You're out of line. She stepped closer. No, sir, I'm alive. My team's alive. That's in line with the mission. The room went silent. Cole watched from the doorway, half proud, half afraid. No one ever talked to Ward like that. Finally, the captain leaned back, sighing. You're walking a fine line, Lieutenant. I don't care what you used to be. You follow my orders or I pull you off the field. Hannah's eyes met his, cold, calm, unflinching. With respect, sir, she said. You can pull me off the field, but you can't make me unsee what's happening out there. Then she turned and walked out. Cole caught up with her outside. You ever think maybe you pushed too far? He asked carefully. She stopped, looking toward the horizon. Someone has to. He sighed. Ward's not the enemy. I know, she said softly, but he's playing by rules the enemy doesn't follow anymore. She started walking again. You saw that radio, didn't you? That's our encryption, Cole. You don't just find that in a marketplace. Somebody high up wanted those people armed. He frowned. You think Command knows? I think Command knows exactly what they're not telling us. That night a sandstorm hit the outpost, violent, relentless. The sky turned red with dust, the wind howling like it carried ghosts. Hannah sat alone in the med tent, cleaning her rifle. The lantern light flickered across her face, sharp angles softened by exhaustion. The flap opened. Cole entered, dust clinging to his uniform. Couldn't sleep, she asked. He shook his head. Storm too loud. Storms always are. He leaned against a crate. You ever miss it, the teams? She paused mid-motion. Every day, but missing something doesn't mean you belong there anymore. He studied her, realizing for the first time how old her eyes looked, not in years, but in miles traveled. What happened to Mason? He asked quietly. Was it really your fault? Her hands froze. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, it wasn't about fault, it was about choice. I made one that night. I stayed behind to cover evac. Mason stayed because he believed in my call, and when it went wrong, I was the only one left to remember. She looked up at him, eyes glimmering under the lantern. You don't forget something like that. You just learn to live inside it. Cole nodded quietly. Sounds heavy. It is, but you carry it anyway, because if you drop it, you drop them. He looked at her, realizing this woman who'd scared half the camp wasn't made of steel. She was held together by guilt and duty. The storm raged on, hours blurred. Then static crackled through her comms, faint, distorted, but familiar. Reeves confirmed channel secure. She froze, that voice impossible. Mason, she whispered. Cole looked up. What? She didn't answer, just turned the dial, heart pounding. Alive, coordinates compromised. The voice faded. Cole blinked. Was that? She cut him off. Could be interference. but her hands were trembling. He frowned. "Hannah, what did you hear?" "Nothing," she said too fast. "Go get some rest." She turned away, but her reflection in the metal tray betrayed her, eyes wide, haunted. It couldn't be him. Mason was dead. She'd seen the building collapse. But the voice, it sounded real. She didn't sleep that night. She sat outside, storm raging around her, staring into the endless sand. When Cole emerged hours later, bleary-eyed, he found her still there. "You heard something, didn't you?" he said. She didn't look at him. "If I told you I did, you'd think I'm losing it." He sat beside her. "Try me." Her voice came low, almost a whisper. "I heard him, Mason, calling my name. Same comm channel we used in Kabul." Cole frowned. "Could be someone using his frequency." "Could be," she said. "Or someone wants me to think he's alive." He looked at her profile, strong, composed, but something cracked beneath it. "What are you going to do?" She exhaled. "Find out who's sending that signal." By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world coated in fine red dust. Hannah moved quietly through the base, gathering equipment, signal interceptors, frequency analyzers, tools no medic should have. Cole caught her near the Humvee. "You're going after it, aren't you?" "I'm checking a lead," she corrected. "Same thing." He crossed his arms. "You're not going alone." She gave him a look. "This isn't your fight." He stepped closer. "It became mine the day you saved my life." For a moment she considered arguing. Then finally she nodded. "Fine, but if it's a trap, you do exactly what I say." He grinned faintly. "Wouldn't dream of disobeying, ma'am." The coordinates from the intercepted signal led them 30 miles east, toward the ridgeline where the first ambush happened. As they approached, the radio stayed eerily silent. Cole muttered, "This feels wrong." Hannah didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the horizon, where something metallic glinted under the sun. A small transmitter buried halfway in the sand. She stopped the vehicle, stepped out carefully, scanning. No footprints, no tire marks. Cole crouched beside her. "So how'd it get here?" "Someone planted it," she said, "and they wanted me to find it." "Why?" Before she could answer, the transmitter beeped twice. Then the ground under them shook. An explosion ripped through the ridge. Hannah shoved Cole down, heat and sand erupting around them. The blast wave roared, deafening, blinding. When the dust settled, she pushed up, coughing, ears ringing. Cole groaned beside her. "What the hell?" But she wasn't listening. She was staring at the small, charred device still flickering in the sand. A single word blinked across its cracked screen. "Found you." Her pulse steadied, not fear, focus. Whoever had sent that message wasn't just baiting her. They knew who she was, what she'd been. And now they wanted her to come back into the light. She picked up the device, eyes narrowing. "So be it," she whispered. Cole looked at her, realization dawning. "You're not walking away from this, are you?" She shook her head. "No, whoever's behind this knows Mason's name. That's not random." He swallowed. "Then what's next?" She looked toward the horizon, where the smoke from the explosion still curled upward like a signal flare. "Next," she said softly, "we hunt." Why did the desert feel like it was watching her? The air was still, but something beneath it was alive, listening. Every whisper of wind carried memory, or maybe warning. Hannah stood at the edge of the crater, her silhouette a dark cutout against the bleeding sky. The explosion had carved the ridge open like an old scar. Smoke coiled upward, thin and slow, a signal to anyone watching from far enough away. Cole climbed beside her, face streaked with dust. "That wasn't a random blast." "No," she murmured. "That was precision, a trigger buried shallow, timed or remote." He squinted. "You think they knew we'd be here?" "They didn't have to know," she said. "They just needed me to take the bait." She held up the cracked transmitter. The small display still blinked faintly, cycling between static and that same word. Found you. Cole's voice dropped. Who? She didn't answer immediately. The name sat in her throat like glass. Finally, Spectre Division. He frowned. Never heard of them. You're not supposed to, she said quietly. They don't exist on paper. Black Operations Network, used to clean up missions that went off book. And you think they were involved in Kabul, she finished for him. Yeah, and maybe they never stopped. Cole stared at her, realization sinking in. You're saying they killed your team. She met his eyes. No, I'm saying they erased us. That night the desert turned cold. The stars came out sharp and merciless. They made camp in the wreckage of the ridge, Humvee parked at an angle to block the wind. Cole handed her a canteen. So what's the play? Hannah's gaze stayed on the horizon. We tracked the signal's origin. Whoever sent it left breadcrumbs. They always do. He smirked faintly. You always talk like this. Like what? Like the desert's listening. She gave a small smile. Maybe it is. Silence fell again, heavy but not empty, the kind that comes before truth. Finally Cole said, back at base, when Ward said you were walking a fine line, you ever think he's right? She tilted her head. Maybe, but I've lived on lines my whole life. The trick isn't staying off them, it's learning how not to fall. By dawn the wind had shifted, cooler, directional. Hannah powered up the portable signal interceptor. Lines of code scrolled across the small screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. There, she whispered. Cole leaned in. What am I looking at? Transmission origin. It's moving. He blinked. Moving. Convoy. Probably encrypted relay mounted on a vehicle. How far? 40 miles north. Cole glanced at the endless stretch of sand. You realize that's open desert, right? No cover, no fuel stops, no backup. She met his gaze. Welcome to the job. The drive north felt endless. The sun climbed high, hammering the world flat and colorless. Heat waves shimmered across the horizon, turning reality into mirage. They spoke little. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore, it was discipline. Around midday, Cole spotted movement through binoculars. Convoy 3 vehicles, maybe 4, looks military. Hannah slowed, pulling the Humvee behind a dune. Marked distance. 800 meters, unmarked trucks, civilian paint, military suspension. She scanned the lead vehicle through her scope. The men weren't locals. Their gear was too clean, their posture too precise. Spectre, she whispered. Cole adjusted his aim. We taking them. Not yet, we follow. He exhaled. You know, patience isn't really my strong suit. She smirked faintly. That's why you need me. For 3 hours they tailed the convoy across the flats. The sun dropped low, shadows stretching long and strange. Finally the trucks turned toward a canyon, narrow, jagged, half hidden by the rock. Hannah slowed to a crawl, keeping distance. As they reached the mouth of the canyon, she cut the engine. This is it. Cole peered through binoculars. You're kidding, that's a whole compound down there. Below them, nestled in the canyon floor, was a small facility. Metal walls, satellite dishes, camouflage netting. No flags, no insignia, no reason to exist. Looks like a ghost base, Cole muttered. Appropriate, she said. Spectre Division always did like their irony. They waited until dark before moving. The canyon air turned cold, sharp with dust. Hannah donned her night optics, checked her sidearm, adjusted her rifle sling. Every motion deliberate, measured. Cole watched her, realizing again how different she was from anyone he'd served with. She moved with purpose, but something in her eyes, something colder, had returned. Hey, he said softly, you good? She paused, surprised by the question. Then, good doesn't survive long out here. She gave him a look that almost passed for reassurance. But I'm ready. They slipped down the canyon slope, moving between rock shadows. Two guards patrolled near the outer gate, rifles slung loose. Hannah gestured, a silent code. Cole nodded, flanking left. She moved right. The first guard didn't even hear the step behind him. A quick arm lock, a whisper of motion, and he was down, silent. Cole mirrored her, dragging the second body behind a crate. They pressed forward. Inside the compound, the hum of generators mingled with the faint buzz of electronics. Hannah crouched behind a barrier, peering into a dim operations tent. On the screen inside, she saw it. Encrypted transmissions, marked with coordinates, call signs, and one familiar designation. K-17, Operation Broken Silence. Her breath caught. Cole whispered, "That's your op." "Yeah," she said, voice barely audible. "But look, timestamp, updated 2 weeks ago." He frowned. 2 weeks. That mission was 7 years ago. Someone reopened it. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing on the scrolling text. Then she froze. Under active status. Operator Mason Hale. Cole blinked. What the hell? Her fingers trembled as she traced the screen. It can't be. He's gone. Unless he is. Her mind raced. If Mason was alive, why hadn't he reached out? Why use coded frequencies and ghost channels? Unless he's being used, she whispered. Cole frowned. Used how? As leverage. They copied what data they could, photographs, coordinates, encrypted logs. Hannah stuffed a portable drive into her pocket just as the compound alarms blared. "Move," she hissed. Searchlights sliced through the dark, voices shouted, boots thundered. They sprinted between storage containers, gunfire sparking off metal. Cole returned fire, covering her as she vaulted a low wall. A bullet grazed her arm, shallow but burning. She barely flinched. "Go, go," she yelled. They reached the outer ridge, ducking behind boulders as explosions echoed below. Cole panted, adrenaline flooding. "You hit." "Not enough to match her." He looked at her. Blood streaked down her sleeve, her breathing steady, eyes locked on the facility. "What now?" he asked. She loaded a fresh mag. "Now we burn their trail." Before dawn, they were miles away. The compound behind them smoldered faintly under the horizon glow. They stopped at an abandoned fuel station, roof half collapsed, rusted pumps leaning like gravestones. Cole slumped against the Humvee, exhausted. "Tell me again why we didn't just call command." She looked up from the data drive, face hard. "Because command's part of it." He stared. "You can't be sure of that." "Can't I?" she said, holding up the screen. "Encrypted files under NATO classification. These aren't local ops. They're joint coalition deep cover projects. Mason's name isn't supposed to exist anymore, yet it's active and tagged under internal clearance." Cole swallowed, meaning someone high up wants to keep this buried. She nodded. "And they'll kill anyone who digs it up." He sighed. "So what's our move?" "We go dark, no transmissions, no signals. We find whoever's behind this on our own." Cole laughed hollow. "You make it sound so easy." Her gaze softened, almost kind. "Nothing about this is easy, but truth rarely is." Later, as dawn spread across the desert, Hannah sat apart, staring at the horizon. Her arm throbbed beneath the bandage, but the pain barely registered. Her mind was somewhere else, years back, in the ruins of Kabul. She could still hear Mason's voice through the comms, calm, steady. "We're not making it out clean, Reeves, you've got to go." And she'd refused. "We hold, that's an order." Then the blast, the roar, the silence. Now she wondered if he had somehow survived that silence, or if Spectre had kept him alive for their own ends. Cole approached quietly, handing her coffee in a dented tin mug. "You look like you're somewhere else." "I am." He sat beside her. "If Mason's alive, you gonna bring him back?" She stared at the rising sun, expression unreadable. "If he's alive, I'll find him. If he's not, I'll find who's pretending he is." Cole studied her profile, the calm precision, the quiet fury. "You scare me sometimes," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Good, fear keeps you sharp." Hours later, they rolled south again, following the next lead hidden in the stolen data. Coordinates pointed to an airfield, abandoned on record but active in reality. As they drove, Cole said, "You ever think about what happens after all this?" "After?" she asked. "Yeah, after you find whoever's behind it, after you get your answers." She didn't respond right away. Then quietly, "There's no after, Sergeant. There's only what's left." He looked at her, realizing that this wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a reckoning. And the woman beside him, calm as always, was walking straight into it. That night they stopped again, this time near the outskirts of the derelict airfield. In the distance, faint lights flickered among the ruins. Cole raised his binoculars. "Looks deserted, but I count movement near the hangar." Hannah took the scope, adjusting focus, and froze. Inside the hangar, silhouetted under the dim floodlight, was a figure moving with familiar precision, shoulders squared, stance disciplined. Too familiar. "Mason," she breathed. Cole blinked. "You sure?" Her voice broke into a whisper. "It's him." She lowered the scope slowly, her pulse steadying again out of pure instinct. "I need confirmation," she said. Cole nodded. "Then we go in." She looked at him, eyes like stone. "No, I go in alone." "Not happening." "Cole." "Save it. You're not walking into that place without backup." A long silence. Then she exhaled. "Fine, but if this goes wrong, you run, no heroics." He smirked. "Guess that makes one of us." As the night deepened, they prepared for infiltration. And for the first time since Kabul, Hannah felt something she hadn't in years: fear. Not of dying. Of hope. Because if that really was Mason, alive after all this time, then everything she'd buried, every wall she'd built, was about to crack. She closed her eyes briefly, whispering to herself, "Don't break now." Then she loaded her weapon, checked the magazine, and stepped toward the light. Why did her hands tremble for the first time in years? Not from fear, not from adrenaline. From the possibility that what she was about to see might rewrite everything she thought she'd buried. The airfield loomed ahead, broken runways, hangars half swallowed by sand. The silence was too perfect, like someone had muted the world. Hannah crouched beside the Humvee, adjusting her NVG straps, voice low. "We go silent past the fence line. No comms, only signals." Cole nodded, his rifle ready. "You lead." She gave a faint smile. "You finally learning." He grinned back, trying to. They moved, two shadows swallowed by darkness. The night air was heavy, thick with the metallic scent of rust and old jet fuel. Somewhere in the distance, a generator hummed, a soft mechanical heartbeat under the stillness. Through her scope, Hannah counted 6 guards. Their movements were precise, mechanical, Spectre-trained. They weren't mercenaries. They were ghosts, just like she used to be. She signaled to Cole, "Wait." He nodded, settling behind a piece of broken fuselage. She slipped past the outer wall, each step deliberate. Her breathing slowed to match her pulse. The silence became rhythm, the darkness ally. When she reached the hangar, she stopped. Inside, under the pale light of a swaying floodlamp, stood the man she'd mourned for 7 years. Mason Hale. Alive. He was thinner, older, the hard edges of his face sharpened by time. But the way he stood, shoulders squared, weapon slung just so, that hadn't changed. For a moment Hannah couldn't move, her throat closed, eyes stinging. He turned, as if he'd felt her before he saw her. And when their eyes met, the air between them went still. "Reeves," he said. His voice was quiet, rough, familiar. "Mason." 1,000 words crowded her chest, but none made it out. He lowered his weapon but didn't smile. You shouldn't be here. You're alive. Apparently. She took a slow step forward. I saw the building go down. I waited 3 days for extraction. They told me you were gone. They told me the same about you. Her jaw tightened. Then where the hell have you been? He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the shadows of the hangar. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. He sighed. Spectre found me in the rubble, pulled me out half dead, said the op wasn't over, said they needed one survivor to finish it. And you agreed. I didn't have a choice. Hannah stared, disbelief mixing with anger. You could have reached out, sent a signal, anything. His gaze hardened. And put you in their crosshairs. No, I wasn't going to drag you into this. She took another step closer, her voice low, trembling between fury and heartbreak. You think I wasn't already there? They tried to erase us, Mason. They buried our names, our mission, everything. You think staying silent protected me? It just made me a ghost. His eyes softened. You were safer as one. Outside, Cole shifted uneasily, watching through the gap in the hangar wall. His finger hovered near the trigger. Something about the stillness felt wrong. Too clean. He whispered into his comm, forgetting there was no signal. Reeves, wrap it up. We need to move. But she didn't hear. Inside, the floodlight flickered, shadows crawling across Mason's face. I saw the files, she said quietly. Operation Broken Silence. Updated 2 weeks ago. Your name's still active. He nodded slowly. Because it never ended. Spectre's been rebuilding it. For what? To control what comes next. She frowned. You're speaking in riddles. No, he said, stepping closer. I'm speaking in survival. He opened a steel case on the table. Inside were documents, satellite images, classified tags. She recognized some of them instantly, coordinates, ops plans, call signs. And one symbol at the bottom corner, a black trident fractured through the middle. Spectre's insignia. Mason said, they're manipulating global strike data, feeding both sides intel to fuel proxy wars. The ambushes, the leaks, the missing supplies, all engineered. Every casualty, every target calculated. She stared. For what purpose? He met her gaze. Destabilization. If war never ends, Spectre never dies. Her blood ran cold. You're telling me you've been working for them? His jaw clenched, working with them to dismantle it from inside. And you expect me to believe that? I expect you to remember who I am. For a long moment she said nothing. The hum of the generator filled the silence, low and constant. Finally she whispered, I buried you. I know. I talked to your grave. He looked away. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back the rest of the team. His eyes flickered. You think I don't remember them every night? Something inside her broke. 7 years of guilt, grief, and questions collapsing into one raw ache. Then from behind Mason, a voice cut through the hangar. Touching reunion. Both turned. From the shadows emerged 3 men, Spectre agents. Black tactical gear, no insignia, weapons raised. The leader smiled faintly. Lieutenant Reeves, we were wondering when you'd find him. Mason stepped forward. You don't have to do this. Oh, but we do, the man said. You've both outlived your usefulness. Hannah's body shifted before her mind caught up, knees bent, weight centered, the muscle memory of 100 firefights flooding back. She whispered to Mason, how many exits? 1 north side. Then we make it count. The first shot split the air. Metal screamed. The floodlight burst. Mason returned fire, his movement still precise, still lethal. Hannah covered his flank, each shot deliberate, economical. Cole heard the commotion and broke cover, sprinting toward the hangar. Reeves. Inside, chaos reigned. Sparks rained from the ceiling, bullets tearing through the catwalks. Hannah ducked behind a crate, her shoulder hitting hard. Mason covered her, shouting something she didn't catch. She rose, fired, hit one through the chest, another through the leg. Then click, empty mag. Cover, she yelled. Mason threw her a spare. Their eyes met across the chaos, a flash of the old rhythm, unspoken, perfect. It was like they'd never left Kabul. Except this time, there was no extraction. When the last echo faded, the hangar was smoke and silence. 3 bodies on the floor. The floodlight buzzed weakly, half shattered. Cole stumbled in, weapon drawn, coughing from the haze. "You okay?" Hannah nodded. "Yeah." He saw Mason and froze. "That's—" "Yeah," she said softly, "that's him." Mason lowered his weapon, breathing hard. "Friend of yours?" "Something like that." Cole frowned, lowering his rifle. "You're supposed to be dead." Mason smirked. "That makes 2 of us." They regrouped outside, beneath the skeletal wing of a wrecked jet. The night wind had picked up, carrying the faint smell of smoke. Cole checked their perimeter. "More will come." "I know," Hannah said, still staring at Mason. He looked back at her, expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have come." "You sent the signal." He hesitated. "No, I didn't." Her breath caught. "Then who did?" "I don't know," he said, "but they wanted you here." A chill ran through her. "As bait." He nodded. "Spectre knows I'm the leak. They wanted you close enough to flush me out." Cole cursed softly. "So we just handed ourselves to them." "Not yet," Mason said. "We have something they don't. Proof." He handed Hannah a small drive. "Encrypted with Spectre's network protocols. Inside are operation records, real ones. Every ghost op they ran, every name they erased." She turned the drive over in her hand. "This could burn them down." "Or burn you alive," he said. "They won't stop until they have it." The horizon began to pale, dawn creeping slow, red and cruel. Cole leaned against the Humvee, watching them. "So what's the plan now? You both have half the world gunning for you." Mason looked at Hannah. "We go underground." Hannah shook her head. "No, we go public." Cole blinked. "Public? Are you insane? You'll start a war." "It's already started," she said. "Spectre, been fighting it from the shadows for years. The only way to stop a ghost is to drag it into the light." Mason's voice was calm but heavy. "You know what that means. No going back, no protection." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in 7 years her voice trembled. "I've already lost everything once. I'm not living quiet again." They drove until the sun rose high, turning the world gold and white. No words, just the rumble of the engine, the wind, the ghosts sitting silently between them. Mason finally said, "You ever think we were the bad guys?" She smiled faintly. "Every day, that's how I know I'm not." He laughed softly, almost bitterly. "Still the philosopher. And you're still the idiot who doesn't duck." Cole grinned from the back seat. "I'm just saying, you two have some weird chemistry for a war story." Hannah chuckled, the sound light, fleeting. "That's not chemistry, Sergeant, that's survival." As they neared the next checkpoint, the road split. One path toward the coast, the other deeper into the interior. Mason tapped the map. "Spectre's central hub is east, underground bunker off-grid. If we take the drive there, we can shut down their network." Hannah frowned. "You mean walk into their headquarters?" He nodded. "It's the only way." Cole groaned. "Why do I feel like every plan you people make involves almost dying?" "Because that's how we know it's working," Hannah said. Mason looked at her, half-smile returning. "You haven't changed." She held his gaze. "Neither have you, that's what scares me." They parked under a cluster of cliffs, setting up a temporary base to rest and regroup. Hannah cleaned her rifle while Mason watched her. There was something in his eyes, guilt, maybe love, maybe both. He said quietly, "You ever wish we'd just left it all back there, never looked back?" She paused, considering. Sometimes, but ghosts don't rest, Mason, they just wait. He nodded slowly. Then I guess we stop running. She met his gaze. Together. He smiled, soft, weary. Together. For a moment, the desert didn't feel so empty. Then the sound of distant rotors shattered it. Cole jumped up, scanning the sky. Chopper 2 clicks out. Hannah grabbed her rifle. They found us. Mason's voice was steady. Then we finish what they started. Why did the air suddenly taste like metal? The question hit Hannah's nerves a split second before the sound. The heavy, rhythmic chop of rotor blades slicing the horizon. Down, she hissed. Cole dove behind the Humvee as the first burst of gunfire tore through the sky, carving lines of dust into the ground. Mason rolled low, firing 2 rounds toward the incoming helicopter, pointless, but instinct demanded it. The chopper banked hard, circling like a vulture marking its prey. Searchlights swept across the desert floor, blinding in the morning haze. They found us fast, Cole shouted. They never lost us, Hannah said. Her voice was calm, but her pulse thundered. The airfield, the transmitter, the message, it all made sense now. They'd been tracked from the start. Spectre wanted them alive long enough to find the truth. Now that they had it, Spectre wanted them dead. The helicopter dipped lower, doors sliding open. 2 figures leaned out, rifles ready. Cover, Hannah barked. They sprinted toward the rocks, bullets shredding the sand around them. The Humvee took a hit, fuel leaking fast. Mason yanked a grenade from his vest, pulled the pin and lobbed it high. The explosion didn't hit the chopper, but it forced it to pull back, buying seconds, just enough. Hannah reached the ridge, dropped prone, scope up. 2 shooters left door, she shouted. 1 gunner. Got him, Cole's rifle barked. One of the door gunners slumped sideways. Mason fired short bursts, each round measured. We need to move, East Ridge gives us cover. Hannah nodded, motioning. Go, I'll cover. Not a chance, Cole yelled. We move together. She gave him a look that could have frozen a sandstorm. That's an order, Sergeant. He hesitated, then gritted his teeth and went. Mason followed, firing in controlled arcs. Hannah stayed back, eyes calm, breathing steady. The chopper swung wide, lining up for another pass. She exhaled. 1 shot, then another. The pilot flinched, the aircraft wobbling. The rotor clipped a dune, spun out, then crashed into the desert in a blaze of fire. The explosion thundered across the flats, heat slamming into her face. Cole turned, all written across his dirt-streaked face. You just keep moving, she snapped. They didn't stop until the smoke was a blur behind them. When they finally collapsed behind a dune, sand clinging to sweat, Cole gasped between breaths. So, that's what you meant by control. Hannah didn't answer. She was scanning the horizon again. Mason wiped blood from his forehead. Spectre doesn't send 1 team. They'll have another inbound. Then we don't wait, she said. We take the fight to them. Cole blinked. You want to attack them. She turned, eyes steel. We run, we die tired. We hit back, we stand a chance. By midday, they reached a canyon rim overlooking an old communications outpost, one of Spectre's relay hubs, according to the stolen files. Half buried in sand, powered by portable solar rigs. Mason set down his pack. This is it. If we blow their link here, we'll cut their satellite connection across the region. Cole frowned. Won't that make them angrier? Hannah gave a humorless smile. Good, anger makes people stupid. They moved like ghosts again, silent, efficient. Hannah scouted ahead, rifle cradled, every sense sharpened. Cole covered the flank, Mason set the charges. It should have felt routine, mechanical, but it didn't. Hannah could feel something clawing under her calm. The same voice she'd buried years ago whispering, you can't save everyone. You never could. Her fingers tightened on the rifle. Mason noticed, you okay? She blinked, fine. He studied her for a moment. You don't have to carry it all. She gave him a look, half warmth, half warning. I do, it's what keeps me alive. They planted the final charge, just as the next wave arrived. Engines roared, dust rose. Spectre's vehicles, 4 black jeeps armored fast. Cole cursed, they're early. Hannah grabbed the detonator, then we finish early. She waited until the jeeps crested the ridge, then pressed the trigger. The world erupted. Fire tore through the compound, the ground bucking under their boots. Shockwaves rippled through the canyon, throwing debris into the air. Cole hit the dirt, holy. Mason yanked him back to cover. You said you wanted a fight. Yeah, not the apocalypse. Hannah didn't laugh. Her eyes stayed on the flames, jaw set. That's one link down, now we run. They fled through the canyon, smoke rising behind them. The sound of gunfire followed, a relentless echo closing fast. Cole panted, they're not giving up. Neither do we, Hannah said. A bullet cracked past her ear. She spun, firing 2 rounds. One hit, one missed. Mason covered her, reloading on the run. They're flanking left. I see it, she shouted. Cole, get to the ridge. He climbed, dragging his pack, setting up the saw. The weapon thundered, laying down a stream of suppressing fire that sent Spectre's advance scattering. Hannah dropped to one knee beside him. Keep them pinned. Not forever, he yelled. Just long enough. She aimed through the scope, saw a sniper glint half hidden in rock, too far for most rifles, not for hers. She adjusted wind, distance, breath. The trigger broke clean. The sniper dropped. Cole exhaled. How do you do that? Control, she said softly. It's all control. For hours they fought in waves. Advance, fall back, fire, move. Spectre had numbers. Hannah had precision. Each shot she took mattered. Each command saved seconds, and seconds were life. But as the sun fell and shadows stretched long, she began to feel it, the tremor in her hands, faint but growing. Cole noticed, you're shaking. Adrenaline, she lied. He knew better, you haven't stopped since the hangar. She didn't answer because she couldn't. They reached a narrow gorge as night fell, exhausted, bloodied but alive. Mason slumped against the rock. They'll regroup by morning, we need somewhere to hide. Not hide, Hannah said, hold. Cole looked at her like she was crazy. There's 3 of us. 3's enough if we're smart. She pointed toward a collapsed watchtower at the canyon mouth. We fortify there. Limited entry points, high ground advantage. Mason grinned faintly. Classic Reeves move, turn defense into offense. Learn from the best, she said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. By midnight, the desert was alive again. Spectre patrols moving in formation, searchlights sweeping the dunes. In the tower, Hannah checked her rifle one last time. The others sat quietly, Cole cleaning his weapon, Mason checking the detonators. Silence wrapped around them. Finally, Cole broke it. You know, I used to think courage was about charging forward, but you make it look like stillness. She glanced at him. Stillness isn't peace, Sergeant, it's the pause before the storm. He nodded, thoughtful. Then I guess we're the storm. The first shots came just before dawn. Spectre teams advanced in staggered lines, methodical, precise. Hannah called out ranges, 200 meters, right flank moving. Cole's saw roared. Mason threw flash charges to disorient them. The air filled with sound, rifles cracking, grenades echoing off the canyon walls. Then, amidst the chaos, Hannah heard a sound that didn't fit, a deep, low thump. Mortar. Her eyes widened, down. The explosion hit 10 meters out. The shockwave slammed through the tower, collapsing part of the wall. Cole coughed, ears ringing. We're boxed in. Not yet, Hannah said, dragging him back behind cover. Another round hit closer. The structure groaned. Mason grabbed her arm. We can't hold much longer. She looked around, dust, fire, the world narrowing to survival. Then her gaze locked on something half buried in the rubble, an old fuel line, ruptured from the blast. She grabbed Mason's detonator. How much C4 we got left? Half a brick. Good, enough to make them think we're gone. Cole blinked. What are you? Trust me. Minutes later, the Spectre units closed in. Silence, smoke, the tower in ruins. Then detonation. Fire ripped through the gorge, heat rolling in waves. The enemy was thrown back, blinded by the explosion. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left. No bodies, no movement. Just silence. Miles away, under a ledge of rock, Hannah pulled herself from the sand, coughing. Mason and Cole crawled out beside her, covered in soot. Cole stared back at the burning canyon. They'll think we're dead. Hannah nodded. Good. Mason wiped blood from his cheek. Now what? She looked east, where dawn painted the horizon pale gold. Now we finish it. Cole leaned back, exhausted. You ever stop? She gave a tired smile. Stopping, a luxury for people who have already won. Mason met her eyes. And you? Her voice softened. I'm not trying to win, Mason. I'm trying to end it. The three sat there, watching the light crawl across the desert. For the first time since Kabul, Hannah felt something like clarity, not peace, but purpose. Spectre had taken everything, her team, her identity, her silence. Now she would take everything back. She turned to the men beside her. One she trusted with her life, the other she'd mourned for half a decade. You two still with me? Cole grinned, wasn't planning on going anywhere. Mason smiled faintly, till the end. Hannah looked at them, the faintest tremor in her voice. Then let's make the end worth something. As they began to move, wind kicked up behind them, carrying the smell of smoke and dust. For anyone watching, it might have looked like three survivors walking away from the ruins. But in truth, it was something else entirely. Three ghosts heading toward the heart of the storm they'd once escaped. Because sometimes, the only way to silence the past is to let it speak one last time. Why did the night feel like it was holding its breath? The desert stretched endlessly ahead, black dunes under a cold, unblinking sky. No wind, no sound, no stars daring to move. Hannah Reeves drove in silence, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Mason sat in the passenger seat, Cole in the back, both half asleep but alert enough to wake at the click of a safety catch. They hadn't spoken much since the siege. Too much lost, too much said. The silence was easier than the truth. Finally, Mason broke it. You know they'll be expecting us. They always do, Hannah said quietly. He glanced at her profile, the hard line of her jaw illuminated by the dashboard light. And you still think this is worth dying for? She didn't look at him. I don't plan on dying. Cole smirked. That's what you said before the chopper, the convoy, the canyon. Should I keep counting? She gave a faint, tired smile. Counting for the living, Sergeant. We're past that. They reached the outskirts of the old mining complex just before dawn. It was the kind of place that should have been abandoned, rusted gates, half-collapsed towers, sand drifting through cracked concrete. But beneath it, the stolen Spectre data confirmed, was something alive. An underground bunker, command node, the final artery in a network built to make war eternal. Hannah parked the vehicle behind a ridge, checked her weapon. The sound of the slide chambering around cut clean through the morning stillness. Cole looked at her. You really think the guy running this is the same commander from Kabul? She nodded slowly. Colonel Richter, he oversaw the op, signed our orders, signed our death certificates too. Mason's expression hardened. He's Spectre. Spectre doesn't recruit, she said. It consumes. People like Richter don't change sides, they just stop pretending they ever had one. They moved at first light. The bunker entrance was hidden beneath a cracked storage hangar, disguised as a fuel depot. Hannah knelt by the panel, working through the locks. Cole watched her fingers fly over the keypad. "You sure you remember how to do that?" She smirked faintly. Breaking into places was the one part of the job they never had to retrain. The lock clicked, the door slid open. Cold air spilled out, metallic recycled wrong. They slipped inside. The interior was nothing like the surface ruin above. Polished steel corridors, lead lighting, rows of sealed doors. The hum of servers echoed down the hall like a heartbeat. Cole whispered, "This looks more NASA than Black Ops." "Spectre always been dressed in civility," Hannah said. "That's how they survive. They look like the people who save the world right up until they sell it." They moved deeper. Every footstep felt heavier, every corner a question waiting to be answered. Then a voice echoed over the intercom, calm, deliberate, familiar. "I wondered how long it would take you to come home, Lieutenant Reeves." Hannah froze. "Richter." Her hand tightened around her rifle. "Show yourself." The voice chuckled. "You always were impatient. Come to the control room, Hannah. Let's talk like soldiers." Mason touched her arm. "This feels wrong." "It always does before it's right," she said. They advanced through the corridors until the path opened into a massive operations chamber, screens covering the walls, satellite feeds blinking with global data. And in the center of it all stood Colonel Marcus Richter. Older, gray at the temples, still composed, still dangerous. He smiled faintly. "It's been a long time." Hannah leveled her weapon. 7 years, you remember the rest of them." His smile didn't fade. "Every name, every failure." "Yours." He sighed, almost regretful. "We were following orders, Hannah. You know how that works." "Orders?" she snapped. "You sent us into a slaughter and erased us to cover it. You called that orders." Richter spread his hands. "The mission was never about extraction. It was containment. The world needed stability. You were tools to that end." Mason stepped forward, fury flaring. "We were people." Richter's eyes flicked to him, calm and cold. "You were soldiers. You knew the price." Hannah's voice dropped, quiet and deadly. "And what's the price now, sir?" He tilted his head. "You brought the data, didn't you?" Her silence was answer enough. He smiled. "Good. You've done exactly what I hoped you would. You've brought it back to where it belongs." Cole frowned. "What's he talking about?" Richter gestured to the screens. "Spectre isn't an organization, Sergeant. It's an equation. Self-sustaining conflict. Remove one variable, it adapts. Destroy its data, it rebuilds. But bring the seed files here," he tapped the console, "and you complete the loop." Realization struck like ice in Hannah's gut. "You used me to reboot it." He smiled softly. "Who better than a ghost to breathe life back into ghosts?" Mason raised his weapon. "Then we end it now." Richter didn't flinch. "You could, but the moment you kill me, the system triggers failsafe dissemination. Every Spectre protocol goes live. New operators, new wars, all automated." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "Then what stops it?" He pointed at her. "You input your ID code, end the loop, erase Spectre permanently. That was always the plan. That's why we left you alive." Her voice trembled with restrained fury. "You left us dead." Richter's gaze softened. "Not all of you." He nodded toward Mason. Mason's eyes widened. "No." "She doesn't know," Richter said smoothly. Hannah's pulse quickened. "Know what?" Mason's silence answered before his mouth did. "Tell her," Richter said. "Tell her who really called in the airstrike that night." Her blood ran cold. "What is he talking about?" Mason shook his head, desperate. "Hannah." "Tell me." He swallowed hard. It was command, it was me. The words hit harder than a bullet. "I called it," he said quietly. "I thought we were compromised. I wanted to destroy the intel cache. I didn't know the team was still inside." Her hands shook. "You killed them." "I tried to stop it," he said, voice breaking. By the time I realized it was too late, Spectre found me in the wreckage. They told me you made it out. I thought if I stayed I could make it right. Richter smiled faintly. He's been my operative ever since. Mason turned furious. That's a lie. Hannah's voice was hollow. Is it? He looked at her, pleading. Everything I did was to undo that night, to end Spectre. You have to believe me. Her rifle stayed steady. I want to, but I can't tell if that's the soldier talking or the ghost. Cole stepped between them. Hey, we can figure this out later. What's the call? Richter watched, calm as always. The call, Lieutenant, is the same as it's always been. Choose the mission or your conscience. Hannah looked at the console. The drive in her pocket felt like a live wire. With one upload, she could erase Spectre forever, but she'd have to use her old clearance, confirming her identity, completing the system's reboot sequence. A perfect paradox. Destroy it by becoming part of it. She looked at Mason, then at Cole, then back at Richter. Her voice was barely a whisper. You built this machine to make war immortal, but you forgot the one thing you can't program. Richter raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Remorse. Then she moved. Her hand shot to the console, jamming the drive in place. Mason shouted her name. Cole grabbed for cover. Richter's composure cracked. No, don't. She typed fast, fingers blurring, override commands spilling across the screen. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. Richter drew his weapon. Mason tackled him. They hit the floor hard, fighting for control. Cole fired at the ceiling sensors, shattering cameras. Hannah entered the final command. Spectre, terminate. The system screamed. Screens flickered, then one by one went black. The lights dimmed. The hum of servers faded. Silence. Then deep within the bunker, a muffled boom, self-destruct charges priming. Mason looked up, breathless. What did you do? She stared at the blank screen. I gave Spectre what it always wanted. Cole frowned. What's that? A clean ending. They ran. The bunker shook around them, lights flickering like dying stars. The blast doors groaned open as the structure began to collapse. Richter, bleeding but alive, shouted after them. You can't kill an idea. Hannah turned back once, voice steady. No, but you can stop believing in it. Then she fired. One shot, center mass. The echo of it followed them up the tunnel, mixing with the roar of the collapsing facility. They burst into the daylight just as the bunker imploded behind them, metal folding, sand erupting in clouds of dust and fire. The world fell quiet again. Cole dropped to his knees, gasping. Mason leaned against the Humvee, shaking. Hannah stood apart, staring at the smoke rising where Spectre once hid. For the first time, there was no mission, no next objective. Just aftermath. Cole broke the silence. So that's it. Hannah didn't answer. Mason looked at her, guilt heavy in his eyes. You should have killed me down there. She shook her head. Spectre's dead. Killing you won't bring anyone back. He stepped closer. Then why can't you look at me? Her voice was soft, because part of me still wants to. He nodded, pain flickering across his face. Then I'll carry that. Good, she said quietly, because I'm done carrying ghosts. They drove until the smoke disappeared behind the dunes. The desert swallowed the horizon again, endless, indifferent. Hannah stared out at it, eyes tired, voice low. You know what's funny? Cole glanced up. What? When I joined the Navy, I thought discipline was control. Turns out it's just endurance. How long you can stand still in chaos without becoming it. He smiled faintly. So what now? She watched the sunlight climb over the sand. Now, she said, we disappear. Let the world write its own wars. Hours later, as night returned, she sat alone outside the Humvee. The stars were sharp again, quiet. Mason approached, sitting beside her. You think it's really over? He asked. She took a long breath. No, but maybe it's quieter now. He nodded slowly. You were right, about ghosts. She looked at him. Yeah. They don't rest, but they can fade. Her eyes softened. Then fade, Mason, while you still can. He smiled, tired, broken, grateful. Goodbye, Hannah. Goodbye, Mason. He walked away into the dark. She didn't stop him. Cole joined her a while later, sitting in the sand, both watching the empty horizon. He said, you could have been anything, Why this? She thought about it for a long time. Because somebody has to remind the world that strength doesn't roar. He glanced at her. What does it do then? She looked at the stars. It whispers and the wise listen. Why did peace feel so heavy? Weeks had passed since the bunker fell. The world hadn't changed. No headlines, no justice, just silence like Spectre had never existed. But for Hannah Reeves, silence was no longer an enemy. It was proof she'd done what needed doing. She sat on the tailgate of a battered truck, the desert stretching endless behind her. The sun was low, bleeding gold through dust. Her uniform hung looser now. The bandage on her arm had faded to a pale line. Cole walked up, carrying 2 dented coffee tins. He handed her one. Still tastes like engine oil, she muttered. He grinned. Best brew in the Middle East. They sat in easy quiet. Wind hummed through the canyon like an old song. When he finally spoke, his tone was softer than usual. They're saying the line went dark. Every encrypted feed Spectre ran dead. No chatter, you did it. She didn't look up. We did it. He nodded. You, me, and a ghost. Mason. He hesitated. You think he made it out? She stared toward the horizon where the sand met sky. He deserved to. Cole was quiet for a moment. He was a good man who made a bad call. Her jaw tightened. That's war, good men and bad calls. He glanced at her. And you? I made both, she said. They drove that afternoon, no destination, just away. Past forgotten villages, through dust storms that turned the sky orange. Eventually, they stopped near a cliff overlooking the valley. Below them, the remnants of a forward base lay in ruin. Half-buried vehicles, rusted antennas, the ghosts of another war. Cole looked at her. You could leave, go home if home's still a place. Hannah's lips curved faintly. Home's a habit you forget when you learn to live without it. He shook his head, smiling. You always talk like you're quoting something. I am. What? My mistakes. Night came quietly. Cole slept inside the truck. Hannah stayed outside, staring at the stars. She took a small object from her pocket, a military tag scratched and bent. Mason Hale. Her thumb traced the letters. For years she'd worn her own around her neck, but this one she carried in silence. She whispered, You got your clean ending, Mason. I hope it's enough. A gust of wind answered, carrying sand across her boots. It sounded almost like laughter. The next morning, Cole woke to find her packing. Where to now? He asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. North. Why? She nodded toward the horizon. There's a NATO liaison base near the border. I'll drop the evidence there anonymously. Let them decide what to believe. He frowned. You sure that's smart? She smiled faintly. Smart's overrated, honest is better. They reached the outpost by noon. Guards at the gate barely noticed them. 2 dusty travelers in a world still pretending the war was over. Inside, Hannah found an old field terminal. She connected a drive, the last copy of Spectre's data, and uploaded it to a classified drop. No names, no message, just truth. When the progress bar hit 100%, she ejected the drive, dropped it in a trash bin, and walked out. Cole waited by the truck, all done. She nodded. Feels too quiet for the end of the world, he said. It usually does. They drove until the desert gave way to coastline, blue stretching farther than sight. Waves crashed against the rocks, erasing their footprints as fast as they made them. For the first time in years, Hannah smiled without weight. Cole looked out over the water. You ever think about what's next? She shrugged. Maybe I'll buy a boat, sail until the fuel runs out. He laughed. You hate water. Exactly, keeps me alert. He shook his head, smiling. You know, you could teach, train recruits, pass on what you know. She looked at him. And what do I know? He counted on his fingers. Discipline, tactics, survival, how to stare down a gun barrel without blinking. Her gaze softened. That's not training, Cole, that's memory. That evening they camped on the beach. The fire crackled low, the waves whispered close. Cole tossed her a ration pack, dinner of champions. She smiled, tearing it open. You ever get tired of the noise? What noise? All of it, the orders, the politics, the pretending. He thought for a moment. Yeah, but then I think of people like you, and I figure the noise isn't winning yet. She looked into the flames, the light dancing across her face. Noise never wins. It just exhausts the ones who listen. Later, when Cole slept, she walked to the shoreline. The moon lay flat across the water, silver and silent. She stood barefoot where the waves met sand. The cold bit at her toes, grounding her. In the distance, she could almost hear voices, her old team laughing on some long-ago night. Mason calling coordinates, the quiet rhythm of duty before it all went wrong. She whispered, I did what we were supposed to do. Maybe that's enough. The tide came in, erasing the footprints she'd just made. Morning. Cole was gone. He'd left a note on the dash. You said ghosts fade. I'm giving you the quiet to do it. See. She smiled, small, genuine. He'd learned. She started the engine, drove until the cliffs gave way to inland plains. Towns appeared again, markets, children, life. Ordinary sounds she hadn't heard in years. When she stopped for fuel, a local boy asked about the American flag patch on her pack. You soldier, he asked. She hesitated, then smiled. Not anymore. What are you now? She thought about it, then, someone who fixes things. He nodded seriously, as if that made sense. Then world need you. She laughed softly. Maybe it needs someone quieter. That night she rented a small room above a seaside cafe. The walls were cracked, the fan squealed, the air smelled like salt and coffee. For the first time in years she slept through the night. No gunfire, no alarms, just the hum of the ocean. When she woke, the sunrise poured through the window, soft, golden, merciful. She sat up slowly, stretched, and whispered, Morning, Mason. For once, it didn't hurt to say his name. Weeks turned into months. She worked under an alias, volunteering at a medical outpost for refugees. No medals, no uniform, just quiet service. Sometimes, when she treated a young recruit with shaking hands, she'd see herself. Too eager, too proud, too unaware of what war really takes. She'd smile and say, Control your breath, the rest will follow. They never knew they were being taught by a woman who once commanded death itself with a whisper. One evening, a storm rolled in off the sea. The radio flickered, catching faint news chatter, something about leaked files, an inquiry, governments reevaluating covert programs. Cole's doing, maybe, or Mason's or hers. Didn't matter. The truth was moving again, like the tide. She turned the radio off and listened to the rain. Later she walked down to the beach. The storm had passed, the sand was wet, shining under moonlight. She crouched and pulled a small tin from her pocket, the last of her team's dog tags, tied together with a faded cord. One by one, she set them in the sand. Thompson, Vega, Miller, Dawes, Hale. Each name carried a heartbeat. Then she whispered, Rest. The tide came in, covering them gently. When it receded, the tags were gone, swallowed by the sea, carried somewhere she couldn't follow. She stood there until dawn, eyes closed, letting the wind dry her tears. When the first light broke, she turned and walked back toward the outpost. People would wake soon. The day would need her. Bandages, sutures, words of comfort she, once saved for soldiers, now meant for children. And maybe that was the quiet miracle of survival, learning to build again, not destroy. As she reached the gate, she stopped, looked back once more at the horizon. The sea glittered endless. Her voice was soft but steady. "Discipline isn't about control," she said to the wind. "It's about grace under ruin, about knowing when to fight and when to let go." She paused, then smiled faintly. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And with that, Hannah Reeves, Lieutenant Medic SEAL, Ghost, walked into the sunlight, leaving behind the wars that once defined her.